You're listening to Beat Autoimmune and Thrive, the podcast all about reversing and preventing autoimmune conditions so you can live your most vibrant life as soon as possible. We talk about autoimmune root causes, actionable solutions, and inspirational healing stories. I'm Palmer Kippola, and I used to have MS. Today, I'm an author, a speaker, a functional medicine certified health coach, a pickleball player, and nature lover who's helped thousands of people reclaim their health and their best lives. Let's dive into this episode. I am delighted to welcome Dr. Christine Schaffner, a board-certified naturopathic physician who specializes in helping people recover from complex chronic illness with a combination of ancient wisdom and cutting-edge biological, natural, and energy medicine and treatments. She has her own clinic called Immanence Health in Washington State, and she sees people all over the world virtually too. Dr. Schaffner has a terrific podcast called The Spectrum of Health, where she interviews leading experts on a wide range of health topics. I was honored to be a guest on her show a while ago on how to beat autoimmune conditions naturally. Dr. Schaffner has also been a guest before on Beat Autoimmune and Thrive. It was episode number 5 back in 2023 on how to love your lymph. And what I appreciate about you so much, Dr. Schaffner, is your openness, your compassion, your collaborative nature, and your passion for educating patients as well as other practitioners about deep root causes often overlooked when it comes to reversing autoimmunity. You have a very big toolkit, which I'm excited to dig into with you today. And in full disclosure, Dr. Schaffner is my personal doctor, and I'm also delighted to call her a friend. I'm so glad you're here. Christine, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Palmer. That was quite the introduction, and I just love being here again. I can't believe it was episode 5. What episode are we on now?
We are on like 55, so we've come a long way.
It's amazing. I'm so happy that you're able to educate and share just your vast knowledge as well during this time.
Yeah. And we have a world of people who are seeking to heal from complex chronic health issues like autoimmunity. And I've seen studies showing that at least half of all people living in the US are dealing with at least one chronic health challenge and often more than one. And so I am super excited to dig deeply into what you're seeing in your practice these days and how you bring so many wonderful tools, mind, body, and spirit to your patients. This is going to be fun. I can't wait to see how this conversation goes.
We'll have a lot of fun today.
We will have a lot of fun. And as always, I love starting with story. And we all have our own health journeys. You've recently navigated your own, and thankfully you're on the other side of that now. Would you be willing to share a bit about that experience and how it has informed your approach to healing and patient care?
Yeah, thank you, Palmer. I'd love to. So many people, trust me with their most intimate stories, and I feel, in the role that I am, I'm more than happy to share what I went through just so I can, just offer hope. And, really nothing is impossible when we really think about it. No matter what diagnosis we're given or whatever we have in front of us, there's a whole vast, story that we can really tune into of being the hero in our story rather than being the victim. And I'm a real big believer, and I had a front row seat to that experience as well. And I actually, in 2022, I know everyone's lives changed during COVID. We were all so impacted by the world changing, and many of our lives changed on so many levels. And I was in a big rebirth of my practice, my journey, my professional life. And it was a stressful time. There was many stressful things that were happening, and my whole kind of life was crumbling on one level, but rebirthing on another level. And I think we all kind of have been there, right? That kind of transition space and that space between, our one end life or life ending and our one life beginning. And I believe that's really where the space where it's the void, we often call it, and, spirituality and, the way that we look at this kind of nothing, but everything is happening. And I think this is really where healing is happening. And in that time in 2022, we're blessed to have a beautiful and lovely, kind, very heart centered little girl. She's 6.5 now. And we've always dreamt of having, a big family. And I had gotten pregnant pretty easily. I've had miscarriages that I've actually learned a lot about my own genetic story, which again, we can also think about epigenetics. I'm happy to share that as well. If I could help anybody who's listening who's had that story as well. I think there's so much more that we're not taught and that we're all on a journey of discovering. So we were wanting to have our second child, and it was during a stressful time. And I just kind of chalked a lot up to stress. And my husband wisely told me, "We're not getting any younger, Christine. Why don't we just kind of get checked out and see, what's going on?" Right? We're the worst patients sometimes being in this role. And so I kind of dragged my feet because I was actually getting sued at the time, which was very stressful from a former business partner, something that I wish nobody to go through. And so I just, again, dragged my feet because it was a very tumultuous time during the lawsuit where I was getting deposed, and it was just like awful, nothing that anybody wants to go through. And, my doctor had recommended an MRI, and I was like, I would have done that. I had the labs that warranted that. I, definitely had some endocrine signs that I was ignoring because of the profound stress. And what happened in that time, it was June 2022 when I had the MRI. And I remember kind of time freezing a little bit when I went to get the MRI. And when I got out of the MRI, there were just kind of some very subtle things that I heard and kind of this moment that I felt. And I didn't know what that meant at that time. And then luckily, we had a call with the fertility doctor the next day, and she was kind of fumbling on her words, and she was talking about my MRI, and that they had found a very large tumor. And I just had to kind of stop her. And I said, is this benign or do I have brain cancer? Because it just wasn't coming out, and I finally got out of her that I had a 3.2 centimeter benign tumor. But even though it was benign, it was life-threatening in that it was in the middle of the sella turcica, flattening the pituitary and putting stress on the optic chiasm. I had thought my night vision was getting worse. I do wear contacts and I walk a lot, but when I was driving, I noticed some kind of changes with under looking at the lights. And so it was putting pressure on the optic chiasm, which is traverses where the pituitary is. And so I was actually um, at risk for an optic nerve stroke at any time. And fast forward the next day, she said she was going to refer me to a neurologist. However, here I am. I talk about brain detoxification. So it was a little like surreal. And then, I'm here going to talk to a neurosurgeon. And I was walking still kind of in shock. And I got a call at 8:30 in the morning from the assistant that I actually took the call, which I never answered my phone. So it was like, okay, I'll take this call. And the assistant of the neurosurgeon wanted to get me in to talk to the doctor before his surgery that day. I was like, okay, that sounds like this is really intense. And so, we all kind of have this image of what neurosurgeons are, right? And I thought he was going to be like this very pompous, like very close minded, but very excellent, surgeon. However,
Mhm.
he was just very open minded. He honored that I was an naturopath. He was very heart centered. And he assured me that he does 420 surgeries that I was going to about to have a year, and that it was going to be life saving, instead of, life altering. And my tumor actually was secreting growth hormone as well. So it was changing my facial structure as well. And, of, oh my gosh, I'm just, my baby was only 2, so you're
Mm,
suffering, I'm
mm.
soothed, like all these things that you just kind of chalk up to stress. And he assured me right away. And in 2 weeks, I was scheduled for surgery. So there was nothing on the physical world I could do to change my outcome at that time. And because I mentioned I was getting sued because I was going through the stress that I was already I've always been very spiritually minded, but I was very like seeking, truth on that level. And I found myself in the Joe Dispenza community, which I am still a fan of. I think he is putting fascinating work out there where he's creating this kind of experience on a very profound level. But when he talks, he's really bridging neuroscience with quantum physics right now. And when you go, I had already been to several of his retreats. And so I'd seen the impossible. I'd see people come out of wheelchairs. I saw people recover from stage 4 cancers. I saw very supernatural kind of experiences that, our minds can't make sense of yet. So I had that already framework. And so I just kind of thought, okay, well, I had my dark night of the soul, don't get me wrong. I had the terror and the fear, especially being a mom and, all of the things,
Mm.
and knowing too much, like
Yeah.
human. Of course, I had those moments, but I only had a short time. So I had to make that decision. I think that many of us do, where we decide. It's purely a choice. It's a choice. Are we going to be in the state of fear and terror, or are we going to resource ourselves? And I kind of saw it as like a final exam, in what I was learning with Joe Dispenza. So I worked with several energy healers that were profound. I had friends circle around me and do intention circles. I had an intention circle that I'm still part of from Lynn McTaggart's work that they, intended for me. I signed up for a coherence healing with Joe Dispenza's group. That was quite profound. And I really spent every morning visualizing a good outcome and meditating.
Mm.
And slowly my fear, transformed into, trust, even though um, the moment it was actually wild. There was no accident. He squeezed me in, so I showed up for surgery and you don't eat and you're sitting there. And I was in this kind of state of really grace. I could feel people praying for me. It really shook my patient, community, and all of them. I could feel them praying for me. It was like this very I've never felt like love in that way. It brings a little tear to my eyes just remembering that. And it was kind of interesting. The surgeon, he came at 5 o'clock. I was supposed to have the surgery at like 2. And he said, I have good news. You can eat. And bad news is I really have to have you come in tomorrow morning, which I wanted the morning surgery anyway, because it's always,
Mhm.
everybody
Yeah.
in the morning. And
Yeah.
just done a complicated acoustic neuroma. So then my confidence increased. I'm like, if this guy just, opens someone's brain up to remove an acoustic neuroma and the guy is alive after, like, okay, he can go through my sinuses and take out my brain tumors. So I wasn't teary when I walked in, as I was the first time saying goodbye to my husband and going in the
Oh.
op, I was actually very confident. It was at a different time. I said, I can take an Uber, Dan. You just meet me there. I was just very assured. I felt grace and trust around me. And, the nurse, when she was wheeling me into the operating room, she's like, I can give you some Versed if you're too nervous. I'm like, no, I actually kind of want to, take a look around and take this experience in, probably the first person she heard said that, And so quickly I was put under anesthesia and I went under the surgery. And I say all these parts because I just am humanizing my experience because I know people are probably listening who have to go through something or a similar experience. And I'll say this one last part, Palmer. So I get through the surgery. It is surgery, so you have to go through all the things surgery, entails. But very quickly, I was, recovered. I had a month off of work. It was summer. I was taking long walks. I was healing. I was recovering. I had so many people send me flowers. It was almost like a funeral. There were so many, beautiful flowers. One flower set would die, another one would come. I never felt so loved. And when I went to the follow up, a month later, I went to the surgeon And he, like analyzed and he said everything looked great. And I had donated my tumor to the tumor board because I was at a University of Washington, which is a teaching hospital. And I asked him about the path report and it was like, what do you notice? Like, what's different about this or what was going on? He's like, Christine, I'm actually going to study your tumor a lot, and I was like, why? And he's like, well, it has all these different cell types. And most of all, I want to understand why a tumor's so large. It was the size of an egg, right, in the middle of my head. Um, why a tumor so large was so easy to come out. And I, in that moment, felt I was validated from, the divine that the things that I did actually changed the outcome. We were often in the groups thinking about like how sticky this must be and how easy it can be to come out. And
Mm.
one of the things Joe says, which I still contemplate every day in my practice, is we can change matter with matter, but it will take time. I did not have the time, right? But we can change the field and have an impact on, and that's where science is going, and that's, I think, where my life is going and my work. And this experience really taught me that I did not change the tumor, right? I changed the field of energy that created the tumor. And that's why I had the outcome I did. And it really strengthened my trust in that what I was doing with meditation and what I was doing with observing Joe's work. And he's just a thought leader for our time. There are
Yeah.
many people who have come across. He has his own insight and his own flavor and his own wisdom, but this is a profound teaching for our time. Bridging ancient wisdom and modern day science of what's possible. And so I really feel I was already on this path, but it kind of strengthened my path that I believe anyone can overcome anything. There's no diagnosis that is too steep for you to overcome. And I believe that there is a vast world of knowledge and the invisible forces and fields of information around us and the many shapes of that, that takes form, that are rooting for us, that we are here to experience and we have forgotten. And I actually study physics a lot, and I'm not a physicist in any means, but I've kind of deepened my knowledge a little bit that we can talk about, studying what Nassim Harriman is saying about the unified field visit physics. And the gurus are right. It's not outside of us, it's deeply within us. And it's within us on a subatomic particle level that we are on constant communication with this divine source, this divine field. So many of our journeys are here to remember and to remove what's blocking our flow of information on a subatomic particle, and that connection to the field. So
Wow.
there's so much there, and thank you for letting me take the time to story, but I just wanted to share that so anyone who's listening can just get some grace and some hope again, because I know this is a slog, especially with chronic illness. In some ways, my journey was more life-threatening and intense, but it was in and it was out. I know the chronic illness journey is the many, many layers of life, that you have to really have your mindset in the right place to go through what
Yeah.
we're asked to go through in the chronic illness journey.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing so beautifully and profoundly your own journey.
Yeah.
There's so much richness in there and so many different directions we could go. What I was struck by a few things. And I want to get to the concept of terrain medicine, and I want to get to quantum physics, and I want to talk about coherence and all of this. I think there's room in this conversation for all of the above. And I'm just also really appreciating how you felt at that moment of having a choice.
Yeah.
And that choice of fear or resourcing myself. And I was thinking she's going to say love, but it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
It's what can I avail myself of, and how resourceful you were
Mhm.
to bring in all of those energetic and beautiful and loving tools. And what's so exciting about this is that you had this personal experience, this qualitative experience, and yet science is proving that there's validity to this, that this entanglement, that our thoughts are actually things, that this whole realm of cause and effect and manifestation and intention and prayer and visualization and grace and trust, all of these words and these practices, it's I have chills when I'm talking right now. I feel the energy between my hands as we're talking. I mean, just this really strong resonance right now. And many people want the quick answer, the quick fix, and they turn to the supplements, they turn to medication as needed.
Mhm.
And the work that you're doing now, in any direction that you want to take us, I feel like the supernatural, this is almost a super highway
Yeah.
that opens us up for healing at a much, much greater, maybe faster
Yeah. Yeah.
level. So please touch on that in the description of terrain medicine, bioregulatory. I mean, you have so many beautiful titles for this. And I would love for people to really get their arms around what does that mean and how can they access that?
Yeah, absolutely, Palmer, and thank you. There is, yeah, so much, richness there, as you said. And I really believe that there is a collective energy supporting this deeper truth of who we are during this 20 year cycle of Aquarius, that is in the astrological kind of aspects of Pluto. And that's complex, but I listen to that because it's a pattern in the stars that also teaches us the pattern of life, right? And there are so many patterns in life. And I think ultimately we are a microcosm of the macrocosm, right? And that is on both levels, right? Earth is obviously going through a transformation right now to Mother Earth. And she is, unfortunately polluted and tired and, just overwhelmed and overburdened. And our bodies are, right? And that's the physical story, the physical
Yes.
sense. And she is also knows she is eternal and something so much greater than just the man-made plastic in the ocean, right? And so I think that that's our journey, too, right? I think, we are physical bodies here and we're here to experience a physical journey and we have to tend to the physicality of life, of course, because that's where the richness and the experiences are. But we are so much more than that. And we'll kind of start with maybe this kind of difference in conventional medicine versus the medicine you and I practice. There's lots of different labels for it, right? However, the conventional folks will kind of think of your body as a car that needs to go to the auto shop, right? They need to kind of see what's broken, what light is on, and then, change that part or change that, put some fluid in there or, rewire something. And then the body is ready to go. And while that can help for like a surgery, I use conventional medicine. I'm very grateful for that. They're brilliant people who knew how to do that for me. Like that's incredible. The approach that we really need for these chronic complex illnesses is this way different approach. First we'll talk about terrain theory, and terrain theory, a lot of my medicine is in the bioregulatory roots part, which comes out of Europe. It's a medicine that was very all encompassing out of Europe that really starts with, just like naturopathic medicine, that the body has an intelligence. There's a self healing or self regulatory intelligence that is always moving the body towards health, right? And I would say this intelligence is even divine in nature and wherever your belief system is. I think there's an application of that, right? What is fueling this intelligence, right? something bigger, right, than us. And then it talks about that, we're not just victims of our environment, but we can actually change our response to our environment. So if we're getting sick all the time and we're overburdened and overwhelmed, how do we go within and change our epigenetic response, change the way our physical body is interacting with the environment so that we can be more adaptable and responsive and more in the driver's seat of how we respond rather than kind of reactive to everything that's coming at us, right? And so that's kind of the difference between like germ theory, like, oh, we all get SARS-CoV-2, we're all going to have the same response. I think all of us know there are many people who like sailed through that time or many people who didn't, and so what was going on, right? Same virus, and that definitely mutated a lot, but definitely there were signatures of what that virus was, creating in a lot of people. And so, then, we go into like regulation, right? Regulation is often a first step. How do we remove obstacles to that self regulatory capacity? We're not healing the body, we're just removing blocks so the body has that intelligence move through the body, more effortlessly, more efficiently, more elegantly, right? So that we could talk about in many layers. And then, where I have come, toward, kind of view the body. Of course, there's biochemistry. I love biochemistry. Biochemistry is very satisfying for our brains, and there's a lot that's there that we need to tend to. But then we kind of think, okay, the biochemistry from where the, science is going is actually a downstream response from the physical fields that are organizing the biochemistry. So, okay, what does that mean, right? I kind of take a step back and say, okay, we're humans, right? We're full of biochemical reactions, but we're electromagnetic, right? We're biophotonic. We actually have sound that is generative and communicating within us and around us. So we have biophonon communication. We are full of water, right? Water by itself is this medium for these communication, quantum particles, but also it is, quantum in itself. It is a highway of communication and a electro dynamicness. There's a quantum electrodynamic theory of water that I've been studying and, really trying to get to the root of. And then there's this work that Veda Austin is doing that even like physics can't describe, where water is consciousness and it's God and it's dialoguing and communicating with the
Mm.
body, and then there are people who are studying this field around us, right? And it's not just our personal biofield, but this field of energy that's around us. But the story is it's not, separate from us. It's actually within us on this, protonic level, that we are in constant fluctuation and communication with this field. So many physicists talk about how we're mostly empty space. We're not even much matter. We're this energy. And what does that mean? And I think when I turn to this idea that we're kind of this, matter that is coming from this field of information and energy. We are energy in the form of matter in, this life, right? And then all of a sudden healing has this whole other conversation when we include all this. And me, you have been, with me in practice. I will prescribe a drug. It doesn't mean that I won't, but I'm holding this other construct too. And I think what that means is that we're called to heal so much when we come in a human body. And I think there's so much in our ancestral kind of lineage through our DNA expression, our personal story, from where we come from, our mom and how we were born into this life, our subconscious, right? Our subconscious is not trying to help us in life, is trying to work against us. So eventually we have to figure out how to heal that. And then there's many traumas that we all go through that can be stored in our brain or in the fascia or in the water or the field around
Mhm.
us. And how is that organizing our biochemistry, right?
Mm.
And so there's so many things to share, but that's kind of the backdrop and the narrative that I'm coming to each patient with. And then, we have to be human. That, like, not everybody can hear this right away, or not everybody understands this right away. And that's okay. But I'm holding that container of limited possibilities for that person and trying also to use my ability. I think we all kind of exercise our muscle in this way of being able to receive information from this source of infinite potential and possibilities. And I think what I've been able to trust in my process is that I can access information for somebody else from that
Mm.
field. It's not just, my brain and my knowledge. It's also, how do I get that information for somebody? And I have kind of little prompts and techniques that I do to make that more comfortable through bioresonance and muscle testing and really talking to somebody for a while. But I'm not, blind to the fact that I'm getting information from something greater than me for somebody else. And I think that's a big part of life. And my ultimate goal for somebody is to trust their inner navigation system and their ability to connect with something greater than them to get the answers they need for their journey. And it's not that we're just all healed at once. It might be the right person comes on the street and talks to you, or you get the phone call that you need, or you get a website and you didn't know where that was coming from, or a post on Instagram now just shows up and it's exactly the question that you've been contemplating the answer to that. So life works mysteriously and there is a lot of mystery in life, but I think there's this choice to see the beauty in life. Uh,
Yeah. Oh, so much in there too. I love it so much. I often talk about autoimmunity as being really an invitation to people to become who they truly are. And so it's often, and I appreciate you use the word reminder, I think, reminding us of who we are and that we are aspects of the divine. We are not separate. We are not alone, even though sometimes I know it feels so alone. And I also know that many people come see you after they've tried everything. They've tried everything. They've been to many, many different practitioners and kind of like they feel like they're out of options. And I think what I'm hearing you share is that there is a vastness of the tools that are available, and that often these are things that we have access to on our own as well. And there's a receptivity that to be open and willing to just sit
yeah.
and maybe inquire within yourself as to, and I ask this as part of my intake form, if your symptoms could speak, what message do you think they have for you? Because when we get quiet and we really inquire, sometimes we know that maybe we're in a bad relationship, or the job isn't a perfect match, or that your body is trying to speak. And I'm feeling like what I'm hearing you say is this invitation to awaken the receptivity.
Yes.
There's more of the receiving, the listening, the openness, as opposed to just a very masculine, take this medication, take this supplement.
Hmm.
And that feels like I'm not as empowered as the patient,
Hmm.
as it is this collaborative, a little bit of a dance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about a little bit about that invitation to receive, invitation to be a fully empowered collaborator on this quest for full health.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually talk about regulation and qualities. There's a flexibility, there's a, just a lack of rigidity. Like, there is something called rigid regulation. When we look
Mm.
at regulation thermography and the pattern of people, there could be even blocked regulation, right? So that is a blocked capacity to receive, right, on a deep level. I think that many of us want this, but we don't know where to start. And, my journey started actually, with the lawsuit and the brain tumor. And that's really when the deep healing happened. I took it upon my life to finally kind of admit, like, how did I get here? Like, what is going on? Right. And it was an invitation to look at my unconscious mind. I'm very blessed. I have a wonderful EMDR therapist. I know there's a lot out there, and not all of them are created equal, like every practitioner, but you have to find somebody you deeply resonate. And that was my path. Everybody has a different path, right?
Yeah.
But that was the ability to go back in and kind of feel the places that were driving me that I did not know, right? Many of us have our stories, right? My parents got divorced. It was difficult, like my blah, 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 right? And so,
Hmm.
oh, that my inner child still was kind of running my show, and all of these, patterns of, putting other people first or getting in businesses that were with the wrong people and, all these wounds that I was trying to, really overcome and didn't have the tools to do that. So EMDR was my path, and my brain literally changed on a neuroplasticity level, right? Once I saw like what happens in EMDR, it kind of exhausting. You have to actually go do the work, which nobody wants to do, honestly. But you have to go feel the things you never wanted to feel, and like realize there's anger and sadness and all of that in everyone's body, and that's also blocking regulation just as much as a scar, right? And so, you feel that in a very beautiful way that doesn't, just with a session. And sometimes the brain will all of a sudden show a pattern, like, "That's where that pattern came from." And you're like, "Oh
Mm.
god, no wonder. Oh my god, I didn't have a chance." And then life is beautiful because it's like once you have awareness, everything changes, right? And that awareness allows us to lay down new neuronal structures in the brain and be receptive in a different way, And I love that you kind of called out like the masculine part of healing because we need both, right? We need the masculine as much as we need the feminine. And I think we've been in a time where feminine medicine has been suppressed, so much. And I kind of see, I talk a lot about this when I talk about systems of regulation, because we often talk about the autonomic nervous system, which is a really necessary system to regulate and to receive communication and to have this kind of communication from the body to the brain. But I kind of say, okay, that's the masculine part of the tissues of regulation. And I kind of see the fascia as the feminine part, right? Because it's kind of surrounding and touching every space and feeling and sensing and, communicating and, just delivering information. And it's actually kind of, like encompassing the nerves that are related to the autonomic nervous system, highways. Eventually you find them in the extracellular matrix around the fascial network and the interstitial fluid, and so it's actually sensing the environment and then receiving the information. And so we need kind of both, right? We need both aspects of healing, and most of us are wounded either in our feminine or masculine or both, right? And I think really healing is wholeness and integration of those parts of ourselves that are hidden or we haven't seen, that could be driving our show, whether it's a physical focal infection or a subconscious mind or our inner child or a part that we left, in a stressful event long ago that we need to go back and get. So there is this, integration piece of like all the layers of who we are. And I use this word coherence a lot because when you study quantum physics, it's this elegant path, right? It's when there's a synchronization and alignment within the communication structures of the body. And so we want the body communicating as a coherent whole rather as a compartmentalized, disconnected, disparate, system. We want it like fully working together. And you actually feel like a different person when you're working on a wholeness kind of highway that like versus a denial, not disclosed, deceptive, hidden, compartmentalized program. We are different people and we've all been there. Like, I mean, I've been totally disconnected. That's why I can talk about this. And so I think, this chronic illness journey is a real journey to not just blame the bugs, but to really look at our lives and why is your environment allowing you to have parts of yourself overtaken by those interferences in your life, right? That are there to take you down and not build you up, right? And it's just shining,
Yeah.
right? So, life is very forgiving. It's really amazing. We're in these organisms that are very regenerative and very forgiving and very receptive. So we don't have to have like all this shame and guilt about it. Just, do the work, see what you resonate. Do you want to do somatic healing? Do you want to do EMDR? Do you want to go scream in the woods? What do you want to go do to just find your way back to yourself, right?
Yeah, it's a remembering.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remembering, and you are whole, you are not broken.
Yes.
Yeah. And so working with somebody like you to help people remember who they truly are,
Mhm.
mind, body, spirit, is such a beautiful opportunity. And I love the concept of the terrain. You hear all the time, it's the terrain, it's not the bug. That's such old thinking, but we are a reflection of our environment,
Yes.
inner and outer. And so when you think about all of these beautiful beings who you are working with in your practice. And I'm just curious about which tools or modalities you mentioned EMDR. If you could speak to that a tiny bit, because some people may not know what it stands for, and just 30 seconds on that, that would be great. Any other practices that you have become, and you mentioned Joe Dispenza's work, which is transformative. Any other things that you feel called to share that you have really found in your own experience have been transformational
Yeah.
that you would like to highlight?
Yeah. There's so many. And thank you. I think, one thing, I'm sure you talk a lot about already, but, we are part of the natural world and, living in these, cities and the way that we construct life, we can sometimes get disconnected. So get out in nature, get out into the full spectrum of light that is available for us when we are out in nature. And, I always see the beauty in nature. Nature is always showing us rhythms and patterns and, ways that life, flows, right? So I think ultimately reestablish your connection to nature, no matter how sick you are, even if you just open the window, that's fine. And then, I'm a big believer in meditation. Joe's work was profound for me, but and there's so many ways to meditate. You can go on YouTube and download Malon, singing angelic voices. And if that's your jam, just do that. But it's these moments of, getting quiet, letting the body just kind of relax, which a lot of times during our day we can't do. And often we just start, we're all, all of us, even who meditate all the time, there's the monkey mind that has to just do its thing and let it go. And then there is finally like, the heart is a really big portal to a lot of the information that I've talked about. So if you can get your heart to open and expand, which takes a time for a lot of us. I had so many blocks to feeling my heart. There were so many walls I put up because of how much pain I was in, from all that I had gone through, that it was hard to feel that. But once you kind of work with beautiful people who help you to remove those blocks, you can feel your heart a lot more. And there's the emotional heart and then there's the energetic heart. So
Mm.
the emotional heart allows you to get in these states of gratitude, love, appreciation. That's the work of heart math. And we know we generate more coherent, electromagnetic magnetic waveforms when we are in those states. But there is also this really beautiful energetic heart that allows you to like connect to this information I'm talking about. And it's just this feeling of like divinely feeling okay and connected. And then, you feel that within your body. And then, if there's something you're still trying to connect with, like health or your future self, you can give rise and put energy into what does that look like. I think we spend so much of our day thinking about what we don't want. We forget to remind ourselves of what we do want. So this is a really beautiful time to just, yeah, plant seeds. What does your life look like? And really feel like connected to that, and maybe you don't know how or why or how this is going to happen, but you don't have to figure it out. You're not alone in that experience. So it can be a really nice way to get in touch with yourself and just feel calm and connected. And then I use a lot of resonance devices that are getting more and more available online now. The ones that I use in my practice are AO scan, and then Energy for Life, which was formerly the Nest scan. So brilliant people have figured out how to connect these systems to your physical and energetic body, and to look for patterns that are, basically where you need support, either through resonant frequency technology, or looking at where there's energetic imbalances in the body. And that could be like a nice, in between your visits with doctors, or just if you're not even on a healing journey, it can just be like, where do I need support today? Like, how can I really tend to those parts of me? Right.
Mm.
So I think that's really helpful. They help me prioritize. Many of my patients also learn how to muscle test, which is kind of fun, and find kind of how to guide themselves of what they need in that day. And I think that's awesome. And then, make sure you're doing stuff that, like, I call it like adding coherent information to your field, like through sound, light, and frequency. So nature is available to all of us. That checks all of those boxes. But you can also find, you can go to sound bath, or find a sound bath on YouTube. You can buy, some home photobiomodulation devices, or go to a practice that has that type of technology. You can, sing, hum, chant, all of these things. And frequencies are often not only what's available in nature or connection with other people, but these types of devices usually have frequency modulation that you could add a frequency. Even YouTube now has, frequencies, for different things. So you can kind of tune into, either frequencies of gratitude or love, or, something that feels good, and there are time for frequencies that can support you on your physical journey too. So I think all of that is very helpful. I'm also a big believer in, neural therapy, which is the scar injection technique I use to help restore communication in the fascia, and also help remove, blocks on an energetic and emotional level. I also, just love ozone. I mean, that's awesome treatment. That's, oxygen stringed together in three molecules together. O3 is ozone, and it has a vast application, not only to kill microbes, but also to oxygenate the body. So that's very helpful. Finding the right team, right? Usually you don't need just one person, you need a group or a community of people to help you, heal and assist you on your journey. And those people might change throughout your journey, and that's okay. You might grow out of one person, or, need the next evolution of what, track you're on, and that's all good. But don't settle for somebody you don't connect with, because I think relationship is really, I think that actually heals more than anything, honestly,
Yeah.
you know? So, so
And don't overlook trauma healing.
yeah,
And I don't want to forget EMDR. I would love for you to touch on it a little bit more, because it's such a powerful vehicle for healing from trauma.
yeah,
And I'm wondering, in your experience, my understanding of it, and I've written about it, is that it's a fantastic modality for acute traumas like a car accident or some one-time big T trauma. Is it also, in your opinion, useful for people that had a lot of trauma over a lot of period of time?
yeah.
What is known as little t. Would you say that it's useful for both, or
Yeah, I used it for both
both?
personally. It's this eye movement, rapid, basically it's a reprocessing and desensitization. So we all get triggered, right? And if you're triggered by something, that is a clue that there's some unhealed part of you reacting to a past experience. So that's a good clue in your system. If you're triggered by a doctor, or triggered by a friend, or triggered by the news, or triggered by something right now, take accountability for your ability, yourself being triggered, and maybe there's a deeper reason that's still loaded or needs to be healed. And so that can be both little t and big T trauma. There are lots of offshoots from EMDR. That's not for everyone. I understand that. It just kind of worked for me. There's also emotion code and body code that can be, a little lighter for people, more energetic. There's somatic therapy. Peter Levine's work, our mutual friend Sutita, has really fallen in love that work and done amazing with it, which just holds the body and helps the body feel safe and, kind of remember, what is, actually there that's impacting them. There's biofield tuning, right? There's actually working on the field and where the trauma is stuck there. There's good old counseling, which I think could be helpful for some people who really need to talk through things, especially if they don't have anybody trusted in their life. But it's not going to help as much for getting over a deep trauma. I think the research shows that. There's a renaissance of psychedelic and ketamine therapy. I think that just needs to be cautiously used and applied. I think it can be super helpful, but I do think it's the right timing. And ketamine, again, if you are drawn to that, go to somebody who does that all the time and who has a lot of experience. Psilocybin, there's microdosing as well, and more awareness around that. There's micro and macro dosing, which I think are both appropriate. I microdosed a little bit during the time when I was really trying to heal and rewire my brain. And I think it was a very gentle nudge. I actually, because I was doing anything to change my energy, like,
Yeah.
like at the time for so many reasons. It was right before my brain tumor was diagnosed. And I think it actually helped me to
Mm.
where I have worked with a really beautiful Reiki healer who did crystal Reiki, which sounds like wild, but it really was like she would even do it remotely because it was in COVID, and I just felt so good afterwards. And she had gone and studied combo a lot, which is illegal in our country. And it's actually this frog medicine, which is kind of wild. And it's a very cathartic experience. Like it's a very kind of purging experience. And then I did that, and she did like Reiki after that, and it was very lovely. But she also used some rapé, which is sacred tobacco, in my nose. And at that time, I didn't know about my tumor, but I believe it was unmasked from me that I could
Mhm.
see it because quickly after it was diagnosed. So any of the interference that kind of kept me from seeing it myself was like totally kind of shifted.
Ah,
So I think there is a place for that beautiful ancient medicine that is, from the, so I think, some people that's their thing. That's their, just their calling. There are great people who have done this limbic retraining that you have to find who works best for you. But there's Gupta and DNRS that some people swear by this, and it's another way to kind of rewire your thoughts because you can get a negative patterning when you're so sick and it's just part of it. We understand, everybody understands. Kathleen King, I've gotten to know, and she has a great community called Primal Trust that is very kind of a combination of everything we've talked about, and people find community in there, which is nice. So I'm sure there's a thousand more things that I have, but that's like a good kind of what's accessible,
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a big menu of things that are out there, and I think, this is an opportunity. I feel that what you've shared is you've given us information and your wisdom and your lived experience, and for those of us on the receiving end of this, to really sit with it and to feel into it and feel what's right for you and what you feel called to try and called to do and in a supportive environment. And, there's no one right way. And I
Mm,
think sometimes we want so much clarity and we want certainty. And sometimes these healings take longer than we would like.
yeah.
But I just want to remind people to never, ever, ever give up, because you started this by saying, and I want to circle back to it, you believe, in your heart that everything is overcomable, that
Yeah.
you can heal.
Yeah.
And I believe that too, and hold space for people until they're in a place where they can believe it too. But just to try things, be willing to step out of your comfort zone a little bit and to trust your own inner guidance and wisdom that, Christine has just shared so many beautiful pearls, and not everything is going to be a fit for every person. But Boy, I bet there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 nuggets in here that you could try.
Yeah.
Yeah. This has been such a beautiful conversation. I'm so grateful for you.
I'm so grateful for you too, Palmer. It's just a real pleasure. Thank you for inviting me and giving me the space to share.
Yeah. Well, this is really going to help so many people. Thank you for helping other people know that they are the heroes of their stories. And
Mm,
you've gone through your own story. I believe, this is my path we go through things so
yeah.
that we can help other people. And may we uplift a world of people that need, some uplifting right now
Yeah.
in community with everyone.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Mindful of your time. I'm grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Palmer.
Be well, my friend.
You.
And that's a wrap. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with your friends and family, and if you feel inspired, please leave a quick review so other people can find it too. Now, if you want to beat autoimmune and thrive, make sure you sign up for my free video training at freeautoimmunetraining.com. That's freeautoimmunetraining.com, and watch the first video right away. Take good care. Bye for now.